Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, January 13th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the best game that took place, the Sunday night football game between the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield and the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. In this segment, we turn our attention to the four big losers. 4 teams played outside of those. 4 teams lost. 4 teams got blown out. I've got one big question for each one of those, and we're going to go through and answer each one of those questions coming up in just a second. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, January 13th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the 4 big questions that I have for the teams that had 4 big blowout losses. And we're going to start off with the team that played first, and that is the Justin Herbert-led Chargers, right? They get absolutely destroyed in this one, lose by 20 points. And the question for this one is surrounding Justin Herbert and the quarterback play. Is he the answer over there? Is it time to move on from a guy like Justin Herbert? There's been rumblings for a very long time around the Chargers organizations, from fans, from media, that talk about is Justin Herbert going to be the answer, a long-term solution? For my money, yes. Yes, he is. He is amazing. He is a top 10 quarterback. He is a guy that I think is the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. Now, you can feel free to disagree with me on that one. That's completely fine. I understand. But to go as far as to say this was completely on him, this loss was completely on him, and that's the move they need to make to get better, I think that's ridiculous, right? How can Justin Herbert help this team? You've seen it in the regular season. This was a Chargers team that was not expected to be in the playoffs. They were not expected to be the 5 seed in the playoffs. They were not expected to win 12 games this year. They went out there and they won 12 games. A lot of that due to coaching, due to good play calling, a lot of that due to Justin Herbert. His ability to play without weapons. For context here, Justin Herbert threw 4 interceptions in this game. Bad. No other way around it. He threw 3 interceptions all season long. He threw more interceptions in this one game than he did in 17 prior. And you can say, oh, that's playoff choking, right? Not all of these interceptions were completely on him. A couple of them were on him, but one thing that I really want to point to in this game, and one thing that I think needs to get pointed out a little bit more, is the fact that J.K. Dobbins, their lead rusher, the guy that they've leaned on for a lot of success, especially early on in the season, had less than 10 carries at the end of this game. This was not a game where they were getting blown out early. This was not a game where they got boat raced from the start. They were in it until deep into that third quarter when Justin Herbert ends up throwing a pick 6, right? This was a game that if you play ball control football a little bit, and it's a little bit risky, sure, but your defense is playing incredible. Your defense is keeping you in it, and the defense for Houston is playing incredible as well, right? But you play ball control football. You run the ball a little bit. You give the ball to your best players, guys like J.K. Dobbins, and let him do something with it. That is something that could make a huge difference. Make sure that he gets at least minimum 12 carries in a game, right? Even in a game where the script doesn't work, right? You have enough time to get him the ball, especially early in the game when it looks like you're dominating, up 6-0. The Texans unable to get the ball going. This is not on Justin Herbert. I'm blaming the play calling a little bit more than I'm blaming Justin Herbert, and this is a team that will get better, right? This is a team that way overachieved. They need to get some more weapons. That defense played great. That's sustainable. The offensive line, pretty good. That's sustainable. They need to figure out what they're going to do at the weapons position, at the wide receiver position, because outside of Ladd McConkey, they've got just about nothing. That's the big thing for them. The next team that I have a question for, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They get steamrolled by their division rival, the Baltimore Ravens. And this question everyone's been asking for a while now. what is the plan with Mike Tomlin, right? Is it time for Mike Tomlin to leave? Is it time for the Steelers to fire him? And I have a two-sided answer for this because we've talked about this a little bit as we've talked about the Steelers this season, because that's some noise that's been coming from fans, right? I think point blank, period, it would be a mistake for the Steelers to fire Mike Tomlin. I think it would be bad for the Steelers to fire Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is getting the most out of these guys, and what he's getting out of these guys is incredible, right? Consistently making this team a winner, regardless of playoff success, when they go up against just objectively better teams than them. The last time they had a playoff matchup that I thought they could win was before COVID, right? It's a long time ago. They find their way into the playoffs, and sure, they've lost a lot of games in a row. But that's because they're playing teams like the Ravens. They're playing teams like the Chiefs. They're playing teams like the Bills. They're playing these teams that they have no shot in the world against because that roster is just not up to par. This is not Mike Tomlin's fault. I guess you could blame Mike Tomlin because you're not getting those draft picks, but this is mostly on quarterback play. They don't have that true guy that they can rely on. They don't have the real weapons out there, and as good as Russell Wilson played, as good as Justin Fields played this season, you all know that's not the answer. We all know that's not the answer. This is not on Mike Tomlin. This is on their inability to find a successor for Big Ben. He has done an incredible job keeping this team winning. Now, on the flip side of this, I think potentially it would be good for Mike Tomlin if they fired him, because if he so desired, he could go get just about any job he wanted. There are 6 openings right now that the Patriots are gone. The Cowboys are out there. He could go to the Cowboys, and honestly, a legacy of playoff failure for the Cowboys, you bring Mike Tomlin into that room, I think they turn that team around, and I think they win a Super Bowl. Honestly, I really do. Now, I don't think the Steelers are going to fire him, but in the case that they do, I think it would be a blessing in disguise for Mike Tomlin. A coach like that doesn't go on the market every year. You saw the Chiefs pounce on Andy Reid when he got in the market. And it's not a comparison that I thought of that I really thought of. I heard it from Rich Eisen earlier today, mainly because Andy Reid didn't win a Super Bowl and Mike Tomlin did. But what Mike Tomlin is able to do as a successful coach is really unparalleled in the league today. You don't see that ever. And I think you need to have a little bit more, I think we need to see a little bit more out of this team. We need to see a little bit more out of the front office. I think they need to be aggressive, trying to trade up for a quarterback. It's not on Mike Tomlin. So what should the Steelers do? They should hold on to Mike Tomlin. They should. Will they? I assume they will. I also don't think it's the end of the world if they let Mike Tomlin go. The Broncos. They are up next here. The Broncos got absolutely blown out by the Bills, and my question for them is this the peak of the Bo Nix Broncos? And I know that's maybe an unfair question to ask for a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, but I've talked about this with a couple friends. One of the things that really I see shades of in this Bo Nix Broncos team is the 2019 Patriots with Mac Jones, right? They had a Defensive Player of the Year caliber corner, Stephon Gilmore, right? That defense was great. Pat Surtain. You had a rookie quarterback who came in and looked really good, off rip. Bo Nix, obviously. Mac Jones. But you also had a really good defense. And I think when you take a look at these two teams, again, head coaches, legendary head coaches, Sean Payton, Bill Belichick, and I'm not saying it's one for one. The Patriots team after his rookie year completely fell apart, right? Defense fell off a cliff. Bill Belichick kind of was done with coaching at that point, at least in the NFL. He now moves to college football, right? But Mac Jones fell off a cliff there, and I'm worried that we're going to see the same thing with Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix. And I'm not saying it's going to happen like that. I'm not saying it's going to happen this season. But what I am saying is we take a look at this team now and the way that it's built, it is prone to collapse like the Mac Jones, like the Mac Jones Patriots did, right? I don't know if it's going to happen right away. But once that defense goes, and it eventually will, unless they can keep restocking it, Bo Nix just is not that guy. He's not that player that can really elevate your team, and I just don't see him continuing to be a long-term starter in the NFL. He's going to be fine next season, I think. I don't think they fall apart that quickly. But eventually when they do, that is something. And either way, I don't think this Broncos team gets much better than 11 wins and a playoff appearance, if I'm being completely honest with you. And the final question that I have is for the Packers. And this one, again, is surrounding the quarterback. That's always the big question. But this is not the same question as Bo Nix. Is this the injury or is this Jordan Love, right? Jordan Love has dealt with a lot this season. He dealt with a bunch of injuries all year long, a knee injury, a hand injury. He played through it all. He did a really good job, honestly, and as the season went on, he was more careful with the ball. But this is a Packers team that has a long line of succession at the quarterback position, right? Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, now to Jordan Love. Right, Jordan Love is supposed to be that next guy, and they've paid him like he is. $55 million contract is insane for a guy that doesn't have a lot of tape on him, right? And he's done a good job. He's been a good quarterback. But when you take a look at the teams that they lost to, aside from that Bears loss, which that's a bad loss, they lost to all the good teams. They lost to the Eagles twice now, right? They lost to the Lions twice. They lost to the Vikings twice. These are all teams that have won more than 10 games, and they just can't compete with those teams that are at the top. Now, in this playoff game, they only lose by 12. And it's not just Jordan Love that was dealing with injury. They obviously lost Christian Watson. They lose Romeo Doubs in the middle of the game. They lose Jaden Reed in the middle of the game. Their top 3 pass catchers are gone. Josh Jacobs is doing good, but in a game where you're being blown out, you need to be able to pass the ball. And the weapons you're having to rely on, Dontavian Wicks, who's fine, but he's not a guy you want to rely on. Bo Melton, not a guy you want to rely on. Tucker Kraft, again, not a guy you want to rely on. They're great secondary, tertiary pieces, but they're not guys that you want to say, you're my guy, go and get it. And I think we're going to blame that for the way that the Packers went down in this game more than anything else. I think really that's what it comes down to. When you're taking a look at the Packers and how they have been built and how they are this season, they are so close to being that great team. And I don't think it's Jordan Love. I think they'll be back. I think they'll be better. I think they will be fine. I think injuries really derailed this season. I'm curious how it goes next season without Christian Watson, because he's going to miss a long time with his injury. But when it comes down to this question, it's not Jordan Love, it's injury, at least in my opinion. Again, let me know what your thoughts are for these 4 questions, for these 4 blowouts. I'll run through them real quick. The Steelers, what do you do with Mike Tomlin? Keep him or let him go? What do you do about Justin Herbert for the Chargers? The Packers, is it injury or is it Jordan Love? And is this the peak for Bo Nix and the Broncos as they currently are? Let me know what your answers are for any of those questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the winner's circle. We just went over the losers. There were other teams that came out victorious. We'll talk about that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.